His 18th birthday was supposed to be a triumph, the culmination of happiness. The festive cake, adorned with melting candles, served as the focal point of everyone's gaze, while the laughter of friends filled the room. His mother, Alara, offered everyone a nervous smile, and in that fleeting moment, hope stirred in Adrian's heart that his stepfather, Conrad, would finally show a shred of kindness. But the illusion shattered the moment Conrad rose from his seat. The silence that fell was deafening. Conrad cleared his throat. His gaze, sharp and cold as a blade, pierced Adrian. In that look was an unspoken reminder that he was an outsider here. "You are not my son," Conrad declared, his words ripping through the silence like a whip crack, "and you will no longer live in this house." At first, Adrian took it as a cruel joke. However, instead of laughing, Conrad leaned down, grabbed a plastic bag stuffed with Adrian's belongings, and threw it at his feet. The thud of it hitting the floor sounded like a verdict. The weight of the bag symbolized the burden of an unwanted existence. In that instant, it dawned on Adrian that his stepfather was dead serious. He looked at his mother, Alara, the woman he always turned to for comfort in difficult times. She covered her mouth in horror but said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any words. A wave of shame and humiliation washed over Adrian. His friends whispered, sensing the awkwardness of the situation. All he wanted was for the ground to open up and swallow him whole. With trembling fingers, Adrian picked up the bag and, without a word, walked out the door. The cold rain instantly soaked his clothes. Each step was a struggle, as if the weight of the world pressed down on his shoulders. He walked aimlessly, tears streaming down his face. The night air stung his skin, but he kept moving forward, knowing that stopping would be admitting defeat. Suddenly, through the sound of the rain, he heard the muffled rumble of an engine. Headlights snatched him from the darkness, and an elegant black car pulled up beside him. Adrian's heart pounded as the tinted window rolled down. The driver's face appeared in the shadows. His voice was even and calm, as if he had been waiting for this encounter for a long time. "Are you Adrian?" he asked. Adrian clutched the bag tighter, unsure how to react. "Yes," he finally replied. The driver nodded and uttered words that sounded like a thunderclap in a clear sky. "Your real father sent me." Adrian, as long as he could remember, always felt uncomfortable in his own home. He watched enviously as other children played with their fathers, dreaming of the same experience. Conrad never truly became a father to him. He wasn't cruel every day, but his constant displeasure poisoned the atmosphere in the house. Conrad married his mother when Adrian was 10. She hoped he would bring stability into their lives. Conrad, a contractor, was a large and domineering man. At first, Adrian tried to win him over, brought him drawings, and tried to stay out of his sight. But Conrad remained indifferent. His remarks were always harsh and critical, reminding Adrian that he was a burden. His mother loved him. Adrian had no doubt of that. But she lived for compromises. Working as a nursing assistant, she often took night shifts and came home exhausted. All she wanted was peace in the house, so she asked Adrian not to contradict Conrad. She would whisper, "Just ignore it. Don't make him angry." Adrian quickly learned that silence was the best way to avoid trouble. Sometimes, speaking was more dangerous than silence. Years inexorably passed, but the house never truly became home to the narrator. Conrad, his stepfather, held all the strings of control. He set the rules, dictated dinner menus, and decided who could cross their threshold. The slightest transgression, be it a forgotten plate in the sink, would provoke an angry tirade about how he wasn't obligated to clean up after someone else's child. A request for help with homework met with cold indifference. Every interaction with his stepfather inflicted a wound, yet a glimmer of hope for change still flickered in his heart. His 18th birthday was seen as a turning point, the start of a new adult life, a chance to earn Conrad's respect. The narrator dreamed that his stepfather would see him as more than just a reminder of a man he never wanted to see. His real father had always been a mystery. His mother only told fragments of his youth, of a forced departure, of difficult circumstances. The details remained unsaid, and persistent questions would elicit a distant look and a quiet voice from her. In the end, there were only questions, with no answers. The morning of his birthday dawned with hope. School friends were expected, those who could be trusted, who didn't make him feel inadequate because of his less-than-ideal family. Uncle Darius, his mother's older brother, a kind and caring man who always showed genuine interest, also promised to stop by, though he warned he might be late. He was the only male figure who treated him with genuine attention. The scent of frosting and candles hung in the air, and slightly deflated balloons could be seen in the corner. His mother tried her best to make the day memorable. Her smile as she placed the cake on the table and her shining eyes instilled hope for the best. Conrad, as usual, sat at the head of the table. His arms crossed, his face unreadable, but the narrator tried to ignore the uneasy premonition. He convinced himself that his stepfather was just tired, that tonight he would raise a toast and say he was proud of him. A foolish hope, but one that could blind him to the obvious truth. His friends surrounded him, laughing and joking. The moment the candles were lit, the narrator for a moment forgot Conrad's presence. As he blew out the candles, he made an almost childish wish to be accepted, to not feel like an outsider in his own family, just once. Opening his eyes, he met his stepfather's unmoving gaze. Something in Conrad's clenched jaw made his heart clench. His mother clapped her hands, trying to maintain the festive mood, and handed him a wrapped box, whispering congratulations. His friends urged him to open the gift immediately, but Conrad shoved his chair back with a loud scrape, silencing the room. Rising slowly, he seemed to have been waiting for this moment. His voice, like a knife, cut through the festive air. 18 years, he said, looking down at Adrian. 18 years of pretense. I suppose it's time to put an end to it. Adrian froze, his heart pounding. His friends exchanged bewildered glances, and his mother's face had gone pale. He had no idea what his stepfather was about to say, but Conrad's taut posture spoke of an impending storm. This moment was the last calm breath before the storm. Everything he knew about his family and himself was about to be shattered in front of everyone he loved. Conrad's chair scraped against the floor, the sound sharp enough to silence every laugh and whisper in the room. He stood tall, arms crossed, looking at Adrian like a stranger. The cake before him suddenly seemed like a cruel mockery, a decoration for a celebration that was already over. "Enough with the pretense," he said in a low voice that cut through the room like a clap of thunder. "You are not my son. You never have been. And as of today, you are leaving this house." The words, like a thunderclap, ripped through the silence. "Leave this house." It felt unreal, but the awkward, frozen faces of his friends confirmed the reality. A nervous chuckle from one of them died, meeting Conrad's icy gaze. Adrian's eyes turned to his mother, seeking silent protection, but her pale face showed only fear, and her lips remained treacherously sealed. A trembling hand reached out for her son, then fell helplessly back to her lap. "Conrad, please," she whispered. "Not now, not here." With a cold turn of his head, Conrad's voice was steel. "It's the perfect time. He's 18 now, and I am no longer responsible for him." A lump formed in Adrian's throat, and a wave of heat washed over him. "You can't just throw me out," he managed with difficulty, his voice trembling. A contemptuous smirk was his only answer. "I can, and I am. You've lived off me for too long. I gave you food and shelter, but you are nothing to me. You are not family, and never will be." A collective gasp swept through the room. Malik, his best friend, started to rise from his chair, ready to intervene, but a warning gesture stopped him. Not wanting to escalate the conflict, he shook his head. Conrad leaned down and picked up the plastic bag stuffed with belongings from the floor. With a toss, the burden fell with a dull thud at Adrian's feet. He didn't need to look inside to know his entire life was contained within that crumpled bag. "Here," Conrad tossed it indifferently. "That's all you need. Take it and go." Silence, broken only by the drumming rain on the window. Every pitying glance felt like a pinprick. Shame and fury twisted into a tight knot, threatening to explode. He made a desperate turn to his mother, his voice a plea. "Mom, say something. Tell him I don't have to leave." Tears welled in his mother's eyes, but she didn't move. Conrad's hand rested firmly on the back of her chair, a silent warning. Only a quiet, helpless utterance of his name, Adrian, like a belated apology, escaped her lips. He bent down and picked up the bag. Trembling hands, a knotted stomach, the room spinning. His friends remained frozen, unsure how to act. "This is insane," Malik mumbled, but no one else said a word. A second burned under Conrad's gaze, A firm, unyielding stare, a challenge. 1,000 words screamed to be let out, but they were swallowed. Nothing would change his decision. Nothing would make him see a son. He turned, walked to the door. A quiet sob from his mother, but she didn't stop him. The door creaked open, and the sound of the rain rushed in. The storm swallowed him whole. The cold streams of rain instantly soaked his clothes through. His sneakers squelched in puddles as he walked down the street, clutching the bag as if it were his only link to reality. Tears mingled with the rain, and he let them fall freely. Every step was a struggle. The voices from the house faded, and only the drumming of the rain and the pounding of his own heart remained. His birthday had turned into a day of exile. The boy who had recently lived with hope was gone. Only an exile remained, trudging through the storm with a bag of belongings, not knowing where to go. His mind was tormented by questions too painful to ponder. Where would he sleep? What would he eat? Would his mother come for him, or would she stay there, pretending nothing had happened? The betrayal burned fiercer than the cold rain. He thought of Uncle Darius, the one who always reminded him of his worth, who supported him when things were tough. But he wasn't here, and Conrad had struck at his most vulnerable moment, knowing there was no one to stand up for him. A sense of defenselessness enveloped him, as if an invisible shield had shattered at the worst possible time. He continued his journey in the nocturnal gloom. His soaked clothes clung uncomfortably to his body, and his sneakers squelched with every step. The surrounding world seemed to blur. Streetlights lost their clarity, becoming blurry smudges of light like melting stars in the rain. Breathing was difficult. Each breath brought pain to his chest, but he didn't stop, understanding that stopping was tantamount to falling into the abyss of despair. Conrad's words, like an ominous echo, resonated in his head. "You are not my son. You no longer belong in this house." These words stripped him of his sense of belonging, ripped him from the only home he had known for 8 years, and all this was done without the slightest hesitation. He wanted to scream, to hurl curses at Conrad, to demand explanations from his mother, but the raging storm swallowed his voice. The only thing left for him was to keep moving forward, each step taking him further from the naive boy who once believed in the unbreakable strength of family and unconditional love. In this endless torrent of rain, when it seemed he had lost everything, he suddenly heard a muffled rumble of an engine behind him. A sudden bright light from headlights pierced the night's darkness, and a black car smoothly slowed, stopping beside him. In that moment, all his perceptions of life were about to change drastically. The rain was falling with such force, it felt as if the sky itself was trying to press him into the asphalt. He clutched the plastic bag of clothes tightly to his chest, the thin handles digging into his palms. Each step was accompanied by a splash through puddles that instantly soaked his sneakers, numbing his feet. His breath was ragged not just from the biting cold, but from the sharp pain in his chest. He told himself he had to keep going, though there was no specific destination before him. The houses he passed emitted warm, cozy light. Through the windows, he saw families gathered for dinner, heard children's laughter, scenes of the life he had always dreamed of but never attained. He wondered if any of these happy people could imagine what it was like to be thrown out onto the street on your birthday, to hear words that you were never wanted. The raging elements blurred everything around him, but he continued to move forward. He thought about his mother. Part of him longed to go back, knock on the door, and demand she fight for him. But a more rational part understood it wouldn't happen. She had chosen silence, and that silence was as painful and wounding as Conrad's words. The sound of a car engine grew louder behind him, taking on a low, steady hum. He didn't pay attention at first, assuming it was just someone driving through the storm. But then the headlights slowed, enveloping him in bright white light. His shoulders tensed involuntarily. He turned slightly, and raindrops stung at his eyes painfully as the car pulled up alongside him. It was an elegant, black and polished car, gleaming even in the pouring rain. The tinted window rolled down smoothly with a quiet, even hum. He froze, clutching the bag convulsively in his hands. A man leaned out of the car, his face partially obscured by shadow, but a strong jawline was discernible. The man's voice was calm and measured. "Are you Adrian?" He felt his throat go dry. He had no idea who this man was, but the way he said his name felt deliberate, as if rehearsed. "Yes," he replied cautiously, his voice barely cutting through the rain. The man nodded briefly, as if confirming something he already knew. "Your real father sent me." These words rang louder than thunderclaps, piercing the raging storm. A knot of ice seemed to form in his chest, stealing his breath for a moment. His real father. The man he had wondered about for years. The man his mother had almost never spoken of. The man who existed only as a hazy ghost in fragments of memory. Instinctively, he stepped back, clutching the bag of belongings even tighter. "What are you talking about? Who are you?" The man didn't raise his voice. His tone remained calm, even, almost soothing. "My name is Callan. Your father asked me to find you. He wanted to make sure you were safe." He looked at the stranger, torn between disbelief and desperate hope. The rain drummed on the car roof, each drop echoing his muddled thoughts. "Safe from what?" he asked. The man paused, then gestured with a nod toward the back seat of the car. "Get in. I'll explain everything. You shouldn't stay out here in the rain." Every fiber of his being screamed at him to run, to keep moving forward, not to trust a stranger who had appeared out of nowhere in the middle of the night. But the man's words sounded like a lifeline thrown into a raging sea of despair. His father, a man he had never known, a man he had dreamed of in those moments when Conrad reminded him of his otherness, a man he had already considered lost forever. The man claimed he was sent by the one Adrian had considered irrevocably lost. "What's his name?" His voice sharp, demanding proof. "If you're telling the truth, tell me his name." The stranger met his gaze without hesitation. "Kieran. Kieran Marlowe. He's been waiting a long time for this meeting." The name shot through him like an electric current. Many years ago, when he pretended to be asleep, his mother had once whispered it. "Kieran." There was such tenderness, such deep longing in her voice. When he tried to ask her later, she buried the name under a shroud of silence. To hear it now from a stranger made the world around him reel. "Why now?" His voice trembled with tension. "If I'm so important to him, where has he been all these years?" Callan's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained even and calm. "It's not what you think. He didn't abandon you. He was forcibly removed from your life. Conrad had a hand in it." The mention of Conrad's name ignited a fresh wave of fury. His look tonight, the hatred in his voice, his eagerness to be rid of him before he could even start his life, flashed in Adrian's memory. Callan leaned closer, his gaze serious and piercing. "Your father never stopped looking for you. He was powerless to change things before. But now you're 18. He tasked me with finding you as soon as you were free." The rain intensified, streaming down his face, mingling with tears he refused to acknowledge. Part of him screamed that this was too good to be true, that it was some dirty trick. Another part felt a fragile spark of hope ignite in his chest. He turned, looking back at the house he had left behind. A faint light pierced through the storm, but that house was no longer his home. Inside remained the man who had declared him no one, and a mother who had chosen silence. His gaze returned to Callan. The car waited, warm and inviting, and his words still echoed in his mind. "Your real father sent me." The choice tore him apart. To stay in the rain with only a pathetic bag of clothes and questions that had haunted him his whole life, or to get into this car and take the first step towards finding the truth. He took a deep breath, feeling the pain in his chest, and opened the door. Warmth instantly enveloped him. The soft leather seat embraced him. The door closed, cutting him off from the storm, leaving only the steady hum of the engine and the pounding of his heart. Callan glanced at him, then shifted into gear. "Hold on, Adrian," he said firmly. "You're going to learn everything that was hidden from you." As the car pulled away, he knew he had crossed a line of no return. The boy who stood alone in the rain was left behind. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just looking for a place to be accepted. He was going to find out the truth about who he really was. The monotonous hum of the engine and the steady drumming of rain on the windshield filled the car's interior. He sat motionless in the back seat, clutching the plastic bag of clothes on his lap as if it were armor. His mind was overflowing with questions he yearned to ask the driver, but a spasm constricted his throat. Callan glanced at him in the rearview mirror, his eyes radiating calm assurance. I understand this might feel overwhelming, but you deserve to know the truth. Gathering his strength, he spoke, his voice hoarse with disbelief. If my father wanted me so much, where was he all this time? Why didn't he fight for me? Callan's hands tightened on the steering wheel. He did fight. You were too young to remember, but Conrad made sure your father was kept away. He twisted the truth, manipulated your mother, and blocked all of Kieran's attempts to contact you. Your father was legally barred from approaching you. Conrad craved power and control and did everything to keep them in his grasp. A wave of anger washed over him. So all this time, I thought my father just abandoned me. I thought I wasn't good enough for him. And now you're telling me Conrad stole him from me? Yes, Callan said firmly. Your father never gave up on you. He never stopped looking. I'm here because he sent me the moment you became legally free from Conrad's hold. Adrian finally learned he was legally free from Conrad's oppression. This news plunged him into a state of profound shock, triggering an internal storm comparable to the tempest raging outside. Agitated, he asked about Kieran's whereabouts. Callan, who was nearby, handed him a small envelope. Inside were a folded letter and a worn photograph. The picture showed a young Kieran proudly holding a baby wrapped in a blanket, Adrian. His heart pounded, and tears blurred his vision at the sight of this touching image. With trembling hands, he unfolded the letter, written in a firm, clear hand. In the message, his father expressed regret for not being able to be with his son for 18 years, and confessed that he had fought every day for the chance to find him. He assured Adrian that he was never unwanted or forgotten, and expressed his boundless love. Tears streamed down Adrian's face, making it hard to breathe. The letter fell from his weakened fingers. As if in a daze, he whispered that his father truly wanted him. Callan confirmed this, adding that Kieran asked for Adrian to be brought to him immediately. Fear and hope engaged in a fierce battle within the young man's soul. He wanted to believe every word, but years of Conrad's cruelty and his mother's silence had made trust an unaffordable luxury. He asked the logical question, why now? Why not wait? Callan explained that Conrad had taken decisive action today, and Kieran had foreseen this, knowing his son would need his help at this very moment. The car left the city, leaving the shimmering lights behind, and delved into the darkness. The rain subsided, turning into a drizzle. With every mile, anticipation grew, tightening his chest. Finally, the car turned onto a long driveway, lined with tall trees, and stopped before a house whose windows glowed with warm light. Callan announced that his father was waiting inside. Adrian stepped out of the car, his legs trembling. Clutching the photograph, he walked toward the house. The door opened, and a man appeared on the threshold. In his graying hair and facial features, the man from the photograph was unmistakably recognizable. In his gaze, full of recognition, relief, and boundless love, Adrian saw his own eyes reflected. Kieran spoke his son's name, his voice trembling with emotion. Adrian froze, torn by conflicting emotions. He wanted to rush into his father's arms, but years of doubt and distrust restrained his movements. Tears glistened in Kieran's eyes as he took a step forward. He said he had waited for this meeting every day of his life. At that moment, the dam of held-back emotions burst. Adrian dropped his bag of belongings and rushed into his father's embrace. Kieran held him tight, offering the warmth and protection he had longed for. In his arms, he wept away all the pain and emptiness of the years gone by. Kieran whispered that his son was never unwanted, that he had been stolen from him, but he would always be his son, and Kieran his father. For the first time in his life, Adrian felt a sense of belonging. The lies Conrad had woven around him crumbled to dust, carried away like the very storm that had brought him here. Kieran's embrace became an anchor in the raging sea of his life. His arms were strong and steady, holding his son as if afraid to lose him again. The tears gradually subsided, replaced by a feeling of relief and boundless happiness. He no longer fought for scraps of love and attention. He was unconditionally accepted by the man who had searched for him his entire life. The meeting was with the man who had tirelessly sought him for years. Stepping inside, he felt warmth and comfort, filled with the sense of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. Sitting in a chair at the kitchen table, he clutched the photograph and letter, symbols of his past life, in his hand. Kieran, His father sat opposite him, his gaze never leaving Adrian, as if trying to make up for every second of separation, every lost year. "I tried desperately to be there," he said, his voice hoarse, tinged with the pain of past years. "But Conrad twisted everything, wove a web of lies around your mother, turning her against me. He secured legal injunctions to keep me away from you. He convinced her you'd be better off without me. By the time I could prove otherwise, the damage was already too great." The image of his mother, frozen at the festive table, as if paralyzed by fear, unable to protect him, flashed in his mind. Part of him still felt tenderness for her, but another part burned with anger and resentment. "She never told me the truth," he whispered, as if speaking to an empty room. "Your mother loved you very much, Adrian. She was a captive in Conrad's shadow, bound by fear of his actions. She made decisions I don't agree with, but never doubt that you were the center of her universe. Her silence was dictated not by a lack of love, but by fear for your safety." His words softened the sharp edge of the pain, but the wound inflicted by years of lies and loneliness remained deep. "So all these years," he said, his voice trembling, "all those endless nights, I lived thinking I was unwanted, a burden. All those times Conrad reminded me I was an outsider here, and all this time, you wanted me." Kieran reached across the table and squeezed his hand firmly. "Every day, every minute, I longed for you. You became my son the moment you were born, and you will remain so forever. Nothing Conrad did can change that bond." The weight he had carried on his shoulders for 18 long years slowly began to lift. He had believed for so long that he was a mistake, an accident, a misunderstanding, undeserving of love and warmth. But now, sitting opposite his father, he realized it was a lie, carefully constructed and skillfully maintained. A lie that had poisoned his childhood and youth was finally starting to crumble. The following days flew by in a blur. Kieran showed him old photo albums, letters he had written but never sent, documents proving his desperate fight for him. Each piece of evidence was like a thread stitching together the torn fabric of his life, healing his emotional wounds. Bitterness and resentment gradually gave way to something new, hope for the future. He often recalled Conrad's face when he uttered the words that Adrian was not his son. There was not a trace of regret, not the slightest hesitation in his eyes. He wanted him gone from his life, and paradoxically, his cruelty had opened the door to the truth. By expelling him, he had freed him from lies and deceit. He also thought a lot about his mother. Her silence hurt him the most. He knew she loved him, but she hadn't found the strength to fight for him when he needed her protection the most. He hoped that someday he could meet her again, to tell her what he had learned, to see if she had the courage to admit everything herself. But for now, he decided to focus on rebuilding the connection with his father, a connection that had been stolen from him. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace, Kieran looked at him with a gaze full of pride and sadness. "I can't give you back the lost years," he said, "but I promise to be there for you every year, starting today." Adrian swallowed hard. The firelight reflected in his eyes, creating mysterious gleams. "That's all I want," he replied quietly. "A chance to know you. A chance to feel like part of a family. A chance to finally feel like I belong." And for the first time in a long time, he truly believed it. The storm that began with Conrad's cruel words had led him here, to the truth that he so desperately needed. He had lost the home he grew up in, but found the family he had always dreamed of. He had lost the man who called himself his father, but found the one who truly was. Reflecting on that night, he realized something he hadn't understood before. Family isn't just about the people you share a roof or a meal with. It's those who accept you for who you are, who fight for you when the whole world turns against you, who never stop searching, no matter how impossible it seems. That night he understood that storms can destroy, but they can also reveal what was hidden beneath thick layers of lies and deceit. The rain washed away the grime, and what remained was the truth. And that truth was simple. He was wanted, he was loved, he was finally home.